What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Conversation Station. This episode, I'm going to be reviewing Mickey 17, a movie that released in March of this year and is currently streaming on HBO Max. The movie stars Robert Pattinson and Naomi Ackie and Steven Yeun, as well as Mark Ruffalo and a few other familiar faces. Now, this movie got like a bit of a critical response when it first came out in the theaters, and I think that in the theatrical release just didn't do too well, but I think over time it will definitely go to show that it's a decent movie that will, be able to be replayed and get its own little cult following. I definitely think it has the power for that. Robert Pattinson does a great job heading this movie as Mickey 17. He is a guy named Mickey Barnes from 2050 who, with his friend Timo, who's played by Steven Yeun, they basically get in debt from a loan shark, and in order to get out of it, they join a program. Steven Yeun ends up being a pilot and getting lucky, and he's just kind of the best, like Mickey's best friend, but he's the best friend you kind of love to hate. But he gets lucky, and Mickey ends up becoming part of something called the Expendables program, which is essentially if you die, you get reprinted, and you do a bunch of odd jobs in space, and it's to basically colonize another planet because I'm sure the Earth is dying. But it's a great way to remedy the need for constant, basically human sacrifice. The Expendables are hired, and they die and get reprinted and are basically, seen as expendable. They just keep coming back and, being used for illnesses, attacks by animals, and just different things that, people might get exposed to. He gets dropped into a pit with the current planet, has a beast that he just assumes is going to eat him. And instead of eating him, these things are called creepers, but they just basically don't eat him at all, and they don't want him. And so, he begins to, kind of study or become curious of why they didn't eat him later on. But it's a really, really interesting and really quickly paced, but also interestingly told story. Robert Pattinson narrates the film, and he does a great job. His ability to change his voice and do different tones and dialects is really awesome. He kind of shows that off in every single movie he's in, and he did a great job with doing that. Naomi Ackie, who plays his girlfriend, she did a wonderful job, just being stunned with everything that's happened once she finds out that there's two of them. And another cool thing to learn is that some of the Mickeys have different personalities, and they talk about that just a very small bit, which you kind of imagine if you died and were reprinted a bunch of times, different parts of your personality would kind of come forward. And so they kind of play with that and talk about that a little bit, but it's definitely different for each one. And I think that more of the story with the whole Expendables and being reprinted thing could be told, and they definitely deal with the funny side of it too. There's a little bit of just comedy and comedic little moments in there, with even though the whole movie itself is not supposed to be a comedy. Now, the entire ship is ran by Mark Ruffalo's character. He's called the Marshal, and he's just big presidential style figure. The director made a point to put at the end of the movie that Mark Ruffalo's character was not based on any specific political figure. And I think that was due to Mark Ruffalo choosing to make the portrayal of this character, specifically Trump. It's pretty obvious who he's mocking. It's pretty obvious that Mark Ruffalo doesn't like Trump, so I think any chance he gets to, kind of take a jab at him, I think this was it. He did the big phosphorus teeth and the orange painted skin, and he's very loud, and his, the tone that he used and the accent that he used is very, very much Trump. So, it's just kind of funny that the director had to kind of say hey, this guy and the way he was written wasn't written to be like Trump at all, which leads me to believe that was just kind of the direction Mark Ruffalo just kind of took it on his own. And I'm sure that wasn't something that the director necessarily loved, but you got to deal with artists as they come. And it definitely, it's perfect for the performance for the character he's supposed to play. That character fits in perfectly and does exactly what he's supposed to do, and be the crazy leader that you hate, that is so full of himself and absolutely crazy and doesn't actually care about people, but gives a rousing speech and certainly gets people excited. So Mark Ruffalo did a great job in this because, the character he was supposed to portray perfectly came through. Again, this movie is a lot of fun, and I think just over time it's going to be appreciated, and I think a lot more of Robert Pattinson's movies are going to be appreciated just over time, just to see how much different stuff he did, and like I said, his different voices and just willingness to do different kind of stuff. And I think that's really cool, and this was one of those movies that showcases that. So yeah, it's just a lot of fun, and definitely worth worth the time. The CGI was really good, and just to see that, I always love the movies that dabble in space travel. That's always going to be something that excites me, and so hopefully they go forward with anything else. And I don't believe there's going to be a secondary to this, but if there is, I definitely would love to see it. Yeah, if you get a chance to check out this movie, it's, as I said, it's on HBO Max, and it's definitely worth the watch. I really appreciate any time you spent watching my show, and I hope to see you again.